Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Goss. Today, I'm here with Jackson just before he flies back out to Australia for the UABC. Today, we're going to be talking about social media in the fitness industry. Now, this is obviously a very contentious topic because social media is prevalent. It's something that people spend hours on every day scrolling, consuming content and information from various sources. And, within the fitness industry, it can be a cause of a lot of, confusion, miscommunication, debates. As a creator or a consumer of that, it's often hard to make sense of it and how we utilize social media within the fitness industry to, reach clients, build our brand and show what we know and what we can do to ultimately create our business and get ahead. So to kick us off, I think, there's a lot of different social media platforms out there at the moment, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Jackson, what do you think? Pros and cons of the different platforms. I know you're on most of them actively. You used to post on Facebook and Instagram predominantly. Not so much on Facebook anymore?
Yeah, so let's start with Facebook then. Facebook definitely, I would consider Facebook now sort of coming close to its expiry date in terms of in terms of being an outlet to grow an audience and get good engagement with your content. I don't know, I think Facebook is probably predominantly used by 55-year-old women and
aunties specifically.
Aunties and meme consumers. There's just not, it is so saturated with the amount of content nowadays that it's very hard to differentiate yourself and get eyeballs on content. So in terms of your ROI, because there is an investment for every piece of content that you put out, in terms of the return on that, I feel like it's very low through Facebook because you're just not quite likely to get eyeballs on your piece. And I think the younger gen, 18s to even sort of 30, 35s, which we would probably agree is our target sort of thing in terms of
primary demographic.
Yeah,
sure.
I just don't think they're spending too much time on Facebook anymore. And I think if we looked at stats, that would probably be confirmed. Now Instagram, I think, is probably the head honcho ATM still. And I think you'd be crazy not to be on Instagram if you're trying to build an audience at the moment, specifically through using Reels. Instagram has evolved a lot in the essence where it was initially sort of like a digital photo album, and that was what it was used for. But that sort of content now, if you're just posting snaps of what you're getting up to in your daily life, it's not really being favored preferentially by the algorithm. So what that just means is that sort of post is not getting put in front of many people, a small percentage of your followers. Whereas Reels content, short form video, that's being favored. So you've got more chance to get that sort of stuff in front of your audience and beyond your audience. Now that's in terms of the pros and cons of Reels specifically. The cons is that you have a significant time restriction to get across a point. And I think that's why Reels can be used the wrong way in terms of clickbaity messages with minimal context that grab attention, maybe trigger some sort of emotional reaction without any real nuance. But it sort of puts content creators in a difficult spot because we can say, we're very limited with the amount of context and nuance we can put surrounding a message, but it's also being the most favored form of content from Instagram's perspective. And that's giving you the best chance to
stand out,
reach an audience and expand. So I don't know, a battle that I've been still working through is finding ways to convert what typically would be in-depth contextual discussions around complex topics through blogs or podcasts or long caption posts, now somehow condense it into a packet that can fit inside 90 seconds and still provide value to the consumer, because you can go up in arms against Reels and TikToks as much as you like, but the reality is like, you can either get on the train or get left behind, and you can be that dude that keeps fighting the good fight and posting big long fucking caption posts, but you watch, like, your engagement is just going to continue to get lower and lower and lower, irrelevant of how good the actual content is itself. And it's like, if the content's not reaching eyeballs, then the content is useless. It doesn't matter how good it is, because no one's fucking seeing it. So it's an interesting little conundrum that I think content creators are having to deal with. It's certainly
from a time standpoint, like, I don't personally create the reels myself for JPS, so, although, like, I've done the content for some of them. It seems that if you were to compare it to writing and, like writing a long form caption or something and having an infographic, like, infographics take time, right? I just see Jacob, and I'm like, the time that he spends, putting together an infographic and then the caption that goes along with it. But with some of the editing requirements, and the quality of the reels that, you are seeing on social media at the moment, it's like they have to take some time. You know what I mean? And I guess it's another skill set that people actually need to develop, because now it's no longer just you need to know the stuff. You don't need to use just Canva or something and slap something together. Now it's like you're basically a video editor, right? And like, a producer, you're coming up with, a storyboard of how you're going to try and convey a message or the information, what it's going to look like, what content you actually need to go out and film, and then piece it all together.
Yeah, I don't actually think that my reels take me less time than an infographic. I mean, I try to do 4 times as many reels for every infographic, just because the ROI in terms of the engagement is just better. But I still reckon that, like you said, like, the time spent sort of putting the video together, the story, the message, with potentially the memes, the clips inserted, and I spend a massive amount of time having to clip shit out, which is a skill, because sometimes I'll get a topic on my mind, so let's say like meal frequency or something, and then I'll speak of what I think is a relatively short message, and it's 3 minutes, and then
and you're like, okay, I'm going to take out
quite difficult to trim the leaves, you know what I mean, to trim the hedges, to make it fit. And I think that's a skill in itself, in being able to work out what's essential information and what's non-essential. But yeah, I think now that reels are like you see, everyone's sort of competitive with each other, in the essence that we're pushing the quality of these reels higher and higher.
Yeah.
People are now using like full camera setups, and everything looks really aesthetic, and professional microphones and all of that stuff. And it's like that does take a bit of time as well. It's the majority of my weekly content. It's a big chunk of my work week is putting that stuff together. So
now from a coaching standpoint, I guess, the end goal is not just to put information. It's like to put information out there, and basically it's like you're, genuinely like peacocking. You're trying to like stand out amongst the crowd and be like, okay, this is why you should train with me. Look at what I know. Look at what I can do. When we're using it for a business standpoint, do you feel like, how do you quantify that, right, from your own? Like if you're posting 4 reels a week and 1 infographic, what is the ROI for the actual business, not just in terms of the engagement? Like, how many people does that bring in?
It's a good point. I have no idea how to quantify it.
Because you'd have to think that, you have a large enough following. I'm not sure how many views you get on reels and stuff like that, but you'd have to think that there would be people who see it, buy into it and go, oh, this is good. Then they continue to see that content, and eventually they get to this crossroads where they probably make a decision to buy in or not, right? I remember a while ago, it used to be like, 6 months or something between, first exposure, of a brand or a website or a product or something before people generally, take that step and buy. I'm not sure what it is now, but it used to be a really long time. Like people would know about something, they'd hear about something, but before they really, spent any dollars on it, it might be months. So it's like I guess these are potential leads that you're generating now that might not pay off for some time.
Yeah, I think that's why it's difficult to track. Like the only real measuring stick I have is that there has been a correlation between Instagram growth and engagement across reels and things like that with all elements of business in terms of like the coaching inquiries, sales on programs and things like that. Whether that's a one-to-one like relationship, whether the one's coming up because of the other, I can't really tell.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if I had to place a bet, I would say that they're linked in some way.
But how linked we don't quite know.
But like the way that I see it is like in this digital age when we are trying to sell, they're essentially digital products or digital services in essence. Because we're not, like I'm not, you guys are a little bit different, but like I'm not hands-on face-to-face with someone. Like it's all remote, it's all online, everything that I do. And because of that, it's like the only way that I'm going to drive customer interest is online. Is online and specifically through socials. So socials in my mind functions as our billboard. And it's like, you want to put those billboards in front of, it's like when someone's choosing where to put their billboard, right? They want to put it in a high traffic area where the most fucking cars are going past. And I just think, well, if I can put Reels content that has the potential to get in front of the most eyeballs, that is essentially functioning as me putting my billboard in a really high traffic area.
Okay, I've got a good one for you. So does that mean at some point, in order to get in front of the most amount of people, you have to make some sort of compromise and sacrifice in terms of quality, the amount of the information that you're putting out? Maybe you have to do something that's a little bit more clickbaity so you can get those people. My attitude, whenever like if I'm working with someone, if we have a client who comes in and they have, and like maybe they've been told something or they've like heard something that we don't agree with. I'm like, okay, it's like, do I go along with it? Even though it's counter to my approach, my beliefs, whatever it is, what my professional instinct is. And my attitude is if we convert them and I can help them, I feel like that will be better for them in the long run, because maybe that's an opportunity for me to educate them and maybe change their mind to something that is maybe, at least to my mind, more truthful or more accurate or better for them, instead of doing something that maybe is not as good, in my opinion. Right. So it's kind of like you might post something that's clickbaity and say, well, it's a compromise you're willing to make. It's a sacrifice you're willing to make, like Lord Farquaad would say. So you can get these people in so you can then ultimately help them. Right. So what's your attitude towards the long way around getting to the question? Your attitude towards, obviously you have to post something that's attention grabbing and clickbaity at a point. So you're trying to balance your values as a business and a coach with getting as many billboards out there. And, sometimes the most catchy billboards and content aren't always, full of truths, or they don't tell the full picture.
I 100% agree that it is a compromise, because I'm under no delusions that real content, specifically even my real content, is very low value content. That's just the honest truth. It is low value content in terms of the way that it can teach, educate, and
Mm.
improve people's knowledge of concepts. It is the lowest form of content, lowest value form of content. But I sleep well at night because I know that if I use this as a means to get them in the door, once they're in the door,
They
I've
get
got
high value.
YouTube, I've got videos like this. Like if they chuck my name into YouTube, they'll find podcasts like that I've done for years where I'll be speaking about two topics for fucking 60 or 90 minutes versus
And still not answer anything. It's
so,
true.
I still
And
finish
it
up
still depends.
yeah, exactly. So there's a difference between like building your brand, building your audience versus like your core value provision. Like I don't consider myself as a value provider with putting out these reels. Sometimes my reels are just like having a couple of jokes about something, and
Yeah.
it's having a couple of jokes in fitness, but they'll get 50,000 views, and it's like I'm not going to try and pretend that that's helping people, but it is a compromise I'm willing to make because I know that if I can get them inside the page, that
it's like you're trying to get them aware of you.
Yeah, yeah.
What you do.
Like, I think this is probably important for people to know, but like there's a big mistake a lot of people make when they're trying to start a career in fitness, and they're trying to do the right thing, right? So they're like, okay, I'm going to start a website. I'm going to get a blog going. I'm going to post like long form 1,500, 2,000 word blog articles every week. And then I'm going to post like a snippet of it on my Instagram. And I'm going to start a podcast as well, like 60-minute fucking podcast. And like, that's their start point because they know like that's the best way to expand on the topic, but it's also the shittest way to build an audience in today's in fitness industry today. That is because people are so impatient, specifically our like fitness market. They're very fucking impatient. And if you're fucking wasting their time for any longer than like 15 seconds, they're probably scrolling. And it's like, if you're relatively unknown, no one's going to spend fucking 20 minutes reading a blog, and no one's going to spend an hour listening to your podcast. So you've got to flip the inverse. And it is a little bit, I guess, ironic because we're promoting, or I am sort of promoting the low value form of content first. Yeah. But I think that is what is necessary to build your audience first. So then you can traffic them into the longer form, more specific content that actually can improve, educate, and turn them from a follower to a customer.
Yeah. And I think there's an important kind of distinction that you made there, that the reels and like that kind of social media that we're seeing a lot of these days, that's not the end game, right? It's like, that's not what you're doing it for. You're doing it to generate interest and eventually provide, like, that's not the value you provide. Like, that's not where you're providing the value, right? Not from an educational or business sense, right? That's where you're doing your, like, getting awareness, marketing, promoting what you do, and, showing off what you know. But the value add is actually in the purchasing. It's like, that's where they get the value. It's like, okay, I want to learn more from this guy. He obviously has some information to provide. And then there's like a paywall. Now there's a paywall. You get this free content and you can kind of see that I know this stuff. But if you want it tailored to you and the actual value, right? I think that's like what you said is a good way of conceptualizing it. It's like, you're not under any illusions. It's like, it's not a super high value form of content that comes later. But it's like, first you want to get them engaged. It's like a kid, right? Like, you kind of like luring them in with something that's like bright and shiny, and they're like, oh wow, that's great. And then you hit them with the, we're going to do your multiplications.
Yeah, I literally think that's how we should conceptualize like the market out there that we're trying to reach. Like, is imagine that they are like children, and children want things that are loud, like funny, in your face, and quick. Like, if you're boring,
all of those things,
they're gonna fucking scroll. And like, it's kind of like, I definitely think that the the target consumer that we're trying to reach is they're becoming more and more childlike as
I was just thinking that it's just like a bunch of kids on like with devices scrolling and just like laughing at different memes.
It is, but I think it's sort of a byproduct of the saturation of social media now. It's like maybe like a few years ago we had Facebook, but now our potential consumer, they're probably looking at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, fuck knows what else, YouTube. And it's like all of a sudden now their time allocation to spend on social media is spread across 5 different channels. And there's a scarcity now. So it's like now they're a little bit more careful with their time when they're spending on social media because they know that they can't consume everything. So it's like if anything's wasting time or anything's not sort of almost like providing a high in that moment, they're going to scroll on because they're like, fuck, there's so much else out there. That if this one's boring me, I'll find something better. You've got to understand the mentality of how the social media market is.
And the mindset of who you're trying to sell to ultimately, like in the end, when you're trying to get these Instagram users to convert to being customers, this all needs to be considered. Now, so obviously we spoke about actual like the content you create, but what are the main considerations you keep in mind when you are trying to come up with content to do that? Like what's your formula or like kind of your strategy in terms of how you build a social media post or a reel to achieve that?
So like I feel like my self-awareness particularly, or like understanding of social media has only really come to light recently, maybe like last like 6 months. And like now I look back on some things with a very different perspective. For example, I now see a very strong differentiation between value posting versus ego posting. And an ego post would be, for example, a photo of me in Bali, like drinking a coconut with my shirt off. And I didn't realize,
from experience.
I didn't sort of have these sort of mental discussions with myself at the time of posting this sort of stuff. But now I'm like, who is that helping? No one. It's helping fucking no one. All it does is it strokes my own ego. And I'm like, why am I posting? What is the purpose of posting this? Because I have social media as a means to traffic business. And ego posts, they're probably becoming at a disservice to that objective because people don't really give a shit about that. They don't care about seeing me with a coconut and my shirt off, unless you're like upper echelon fitness influencer where people are literally following you because of they get motivation or inspiration from your physique. But that's not me, and I think that's where like awareness of who you are on social media is important. But like my persona or identity on social media is what I believe is educator, right? So I'm like, why am I posting all of these things that are just ego posts? And that was something that I only really grasped recently. And then I was like, right, I need to be a lot more careful and audit each post that I do and ask myself, is this providing value to my following? And is it in line with what my objective for having social media is? And all of a sudden, once you start having that sort of conversation, I'm a hell of a lot less inclined to post fucking selfies and all of this shit that just doesn't help anyone. And now like really trying to bias content where I can be like, yes, I know if someone listens to this, there's a high chance that it's going to
learn something. Yeah.
You're going to learn something. And I this is based off nothing, but I set myself the rule that forever, like there's going to be like a 4-to-1 between value posts and ego posts, because like I said before, like Instagram was a photo album before, and you could just do sort of ego posts, like posting things that make you feel good and they're important to you, and that was fine. But now it's like it's much more of a business tool now versus photo album. So I really don't think that if you are trying to build an audience that is with the purpose to traffic business, I don't think it's in your best interest to be posting photo album type stuff or selfies and you having a drink on the beach. I just don't really think most people give a shit about it. That you got to sort of be self-aware and ask yourself, what are people following me for? And that could be education. It could be really strong strength feats in the gym, or it could be maybe you just have such a crazy physique that people follow you for inspiration and things like that. There's many reasons why people follow you, but I think being aware of that is important. So then you can go, okay, I'm going to really heavily bias my type of content to provide what they're seeking.
I like that. I think that's a good way of thinking about how you utilize social media. And again, I guess the whole the flavor of this talk is, using social media from a fitness and, more business, or like a coach, or maybe you're just an athlete, but it's like you're trying to use it it's serving a purpose, right? So I guess, when people are posting, if they want to grow their brand, be that a personal brand or a business brand, thinking about what the end goal is and who they're providing value to will definitely help in directing the content that they're actually putting out there. I hadn't really thought of it like that.
It makes a big difference. And like, obviously there's a lot of other factors that could be at play here, but like, since that sort of realization and me having that sort of audit on my posts, like my following's approximately doubled in like a pretty short space of time. And I think like it's funny, like I was that douchey guy who would post lots of like gym selfies and stuff because it made me feel good, like when I had a good pump or whatever. I fucking honestly, I don't think, or I don't know if I'll ever post like a topless selfie again. That's how like light bulb epiphany this type of realization for me is, like when you truly boil something down, and before you do each post, be like, what am I posting this for? Like, is it going to help someone? And then a lot of the time, like, fuck, it's actually not helping anyone. It only makes people feel good. And if you can like bias your content where a follower is just purely getting like value for free, like you do that over a long enough time, your chance to convert them into either free long form content, because even that's an asset to be able to get someone to go from consuming your 30-second reels to then reading 20 minutes of a blog or watching a 20-minute YouTube video. I consider that hugely valuable.
Gateway.
Yeah, that's the gateway. I think you're far more likely to put them through the gate, like if you can really, really preference value posting versus ego posting.
It'd be interesting to I wonder if like people listening to this go out and just like audit, and even just like imagine like asking your followers and just be like, hey, why do you follow me? Like, what do you follow me for? It'd be interesting to see how many people, I certainly know most of the fitness people, like people I follow, it's like I initially followed them because they put out information. It's like there's a lot of people who I'm like, they've got cool physiques. I love the way they train, like to see what they're doing, in the gym or in their training. But at the end of the day, that's nearly serving another purpose, right? That's like part of the value they provide. It's like Mike Israel, great one. He always he posts his training all the time. And I know a lot of people get value out of that because they get to discuss it. Oh, why is he doing this? Why does he structure his training like that? They ask questions and it feeds into something that's a lot deeper than just look at Dr. Mike, he's jacked.
Yeah.
Right. That's cool. All right. So with that in mind, hopefully there's a lot of people going out and auditing why they're posting what they're posting. No more rig selfies.
We can. Your rig just has to be sick. Like otherwise it's not value to anyone.
I actually had it was like an 8-year-old kid tell me my muscles are small, and I was like, yeah, I know. That's why I go to the gym. I was like, gotcha. If there's any way to like crush your soul, it's being insulted by a child. All right, with that, like, what are some things not to do on social media? Obviously, calling people out. We've spoken about that one before. Like, call out culture has always been a thing. But in terms of, if you're a content provider, you're a business, or you're someone trying to build your own brand, whatever that looks like for you, what are things that, you try not to do? No more coconut posts. What else?
Coconut posts are out or minimized to at least less than a quarter. compared to the ratio of my value posts.
Yep.
But
1 in 5.
Mistakes that I see, over posting. I'm going to go very specific to what I think the listener audience is here, which is people either working in the fitness industry or aspiring to. Now, client transformations, like, I think can be heavily overused. Now, people might disagree with me, but I don't think that that's a value post. I think it's an ego post, because I think it's saying, look at me, I'm so good, blah, blah, blah. Now, there is some merit to sprinkle them in along the way, just like there is merit to sprinkle in some topless selfies along the way to show that you sort of are walking the walk and look the part, you know. But I think, and in the same way, sprinkling in some transformations is going to show that you know what you're doing with regards to coaching, education, whatever you are doing. But I think they need to be used sparingly. And I see a lot of coaches just like pumping these like throughout their socials. And when you are doing that, I think it's more of an ego post, and in the sense that it's not really providing value to the rest of your audience. Maybe a very small fraction that was like on the fringe of signing up for something, maybe that might just tip them over the line. But for the very large majority of your audience, it's not really helping them.
I have a slightly different attitude towards transformation. Now, we post transformations, like, and that's something that we do. Not that I don't think our transformations is necessarily something we post like absurdly frequently anyway. But I often think of, you know, sometimes transformations, they're not just like good from a business standpoint and a coach standpoint, because like you said, they do show that you know what you're doing and you can deliver, but also it exposes you to other people. Like, you know, when you tag and you share and other people like see that it's like there's someone else who may have had a similar journey or have done something that they want to do. I think that can create a lot of buy-in for some people, particularly the ones that are like maybe a little bit more extreme or the more unique transformations. You know, the ones where it's like someone loses 50 kilos, like they can be, I think they're like we spoke about initially, they're a lot more emotive than seeing someone who just lost 3 kilos and who's already in good shape and is still in good shape. Right? Unless they've gone and, you know, maybe got to a stage or they've done something like really push themselves or change their lives. I think, you know, those ones can be a lot more useful and they can provide value. You know, one springs to mind where it's like, you know, young females. It's like just young people in general, how there's like a massive tendency to feel like they need to look a certain way and they always need to be dieting and like weight loss. And it's kind of like this thing that's always pushed forwards. And instead, like, you know, trying to put out, you know, people, how they've had these transformations and, you know, maybe they've worked on their nutrition and their mindset and all these things to like all the psychology of eating. And now they feel like they're comfortable in themselves and they've been able to, you know, eat in a calorie surplus for the first time ever without freaking out and feeling like they need to binge or like, you know, purge or anything like that. I think those ones where they can be relatable, right? But I definitely see the point of, you know, it can't be the only thing you're posting.
I think counterpoint, I think you can convert it into a value post if you give enough context about the transformation, which you're sort of suggesting there. Like
I think
what they had to do.
Yeah, you need to write a story about it. Like, yeah, so
that's different.
People can buy into it a bit more.
Like I see a lot of coaches, they're just like
transformation and just lost 10 kilos.
12 weeks with Tim. Yeah. It's like no one gives a fuck. Like that doesn't give any insight to what happened or what your process was.
I definitely think that, like, again, it's like a reel, right? You kind of need this. It's like the image is the hook, but the value is in the caption more often than not. Like how you package that information. You're trying to draw people in by like, look at what this person's achieved, and they go, okay, but what is it? If you're not going into some contextual detail, I definitely think a lot of the value can be lost.
Yeah, that's fair. And I reckon JPS wouldn't be posting these more than 1 to 5 to the rest of their content as well.
No.
That'd be, I guess.
Probably less than that.
Like, yeah. I think if you can post these sort of things regularly if your like amount of value content is heavy, which JPS is going to be. Other mistake is like, and this is something I can proudly say that like I have not gone down that route, is to do the whole like 3 spots remaining posts like all the time. Like, I don't know who falls for that, but I think it looks really, really tacky when like it's got these like coaches like, oh, sign up for me. They're ads, basically ad posts, and they're not value posts. It's you just sort of saying, to me, it's like, I need clients, I need money. Like, and when I've seen them post like 3 times saying those 3 spots are still remaining, it's like, okay, is there 3 spots remaining, or are you just trying to get a couple of clients here? You know, so I think people need to be careful with the sort of language that they use,
and the phrasing,
when they're trying to drive clients. And to be fair, if you are good at what you do, your word of mouth from people around you will be your biggest asset in terms of drawing new clients. That's why I've never really needed to post too much about like how my coaching works or how to sign up with me or anything like that. It's just people do the advertising for you.
Yeah, that's my attitude towards.
If you do a good job.
Yeah, they're your walking billboards, your clients.
Exactly.
That's what I think of them.
Exactly. And even if you're just starting out and you're like, oh fuck, but guys, like I don't have any clients yet to like spread the word. Well, like do what I did and probably what you might have done, but like I worked with people for free at the start because I was like, I'm just going to practice and test out my shit. And then like, if you do a good job with them, the word will spread.
Yeah, they'll tell people, they'll be like, yeah, I work with this guy. He knows his stuff.
Yeah. And like doing the opposite in terms of like, oh, like, guys, I just opened up another coaching spot, like, and it was seeing them do this like 2 weeks ago. It just looks desperate to me. And I
definitely agree with that one for like coaches. It's one that I see a lot. I think the same thing when you're like people advertising for like coaching spots, because most like we do it for events and stuff when we have a fixed number of spots that you can actually cater, be it like, you know, we've got the workshop with RP on the weekend. There's only a finite amount of spots we can actually fit people into before it's impractical. So there's some merit because I guess it promotes urgency. I definitely see the whole point of like people sometimes don't buy into it, but I think for the coaching side of things, I don't know many coaches who are like that busy. You know what I mean? It's like all the coaches I know that can't take clients on have never ever posted like 3 spots left. Like,
great point.
I get, it's like people ask if they can train with me and I'll be like I can't. Like I do. It's like you would need the most specific time of day available to fit into my current like coaching schedule, right? It's like clients come back and they'll be like, hey, do you have 6 o'clock free? I'm like, no, right? I'm not saying, hey, I've got 1 spot free at 9 o'clock. I'm doing other stuff with that time.
Yep.
Writing programs. I definitely think, that's a good one to not act like, it's like, don't act like you're busy. It's like, if you do a good job with your clients, it'll sell. Like, and this is my attitude for like our coaching and like what I do as a coach. Like we'll have people come in for consultations and it's like, at no point do I feel like I ever have to sell anything. I completely like wholeheartedly believe what we do sells itself. If you're here, it's like you've already bought into it. I'm just explaining to you now like what everything looks like and maybe answering any questions that you might have. I'm not trying to be like, oh yeah, you really need us. Like, but hopefully we put out enough information for you to get to that point. And like, that's what you're saying as well with like all your clients, like the word of mouth spreads, people find out how you operate, what you do, and then they're converting, they're coming in and they're like, yep, sign me up. I'm ready to go, Jackson.
Yeah, it's a good point and something that I actually agree with you 100%. But I don't, if someone's inquiring about coaching, at no point am I ever trying to convince them to get over the line.
Yeah, you're just giving them information.
Yeah, but it's interesting that like you probably get it as well, like heaps of DMs by like these like fitness coaches and whoever the fuck they are, where like, oh, we'll give you the skills to like, convert your leads. Like,
my leads convert themselves. Thank you very much.
Like I don't have to fucking twist someone's arm to get them in.
If you feel like you do, you probably need to stop listening to this video and go back to something else about like the fundamentals of coaching.
Yeah, because it's deceptive. It's deceptive if you're having to like use tactics to convert your leads.
Sell it, yeah.
It's not right. And what that does is it illuminates potentially, probably, a weakness in your coaching somewhere else.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like I think it's nearly a good way to like wrap everything up. If you are good at what you do and you have the tools and everything, it's like really you're just trying to use social media to draw people in, right? And then provide them value, right? It's like you have such a robust skill set that you can do that, right? But if you're going out and you're like taking, information from other people and like you're just like resharing other information all the time, never really providing your own value, or trying to use tactics on Instagram or, social media that, maybe are a little bit dodgy. I definitely think that, from a coaching standpoint and a business standpoint, it will show. It'll eventually show. It'll always come out, right? And it's like, if you're a good coach, word of mouth will spread. You don't need to be necessarily, I know it's like, I don't have a massive personal following on Instagram, but I have more than enough clients. Don't want any more clients, right? And it's like, and I don't necessarily use that as to provide value for my coaching per se, right? But other people do. So I think, we shouldn't be making this conflated relationship necessarily between the best coaches always have the biggest Instagrams, because you don't need them. You don't need to, but if you want to get in front of more people, it's a great way to do it, but you still need to have the basics down pat.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice way to wrap it up, I reckon.
Cool.
And don't buy followers. You look like a fucking idiot.
Oh my God. We're going to finish on that. So,
and you're getting 1,000 views on a reel.
There are so many times where I like looked at people, right? I remember when like bulk nutrient, like I was with bulk nutrients and I'm like, I don't have any followers, but they were prepared to like sponsor me. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool, right? But they saw that I had value, because like, even though I don't have influence necessarily on Instagram and social media, like working in a gym and having, 100 people who would potentially buy from, something that I buy just because they're like, hey, that's good, right? Or they'll ask me, that means you're influential, right? You don't need to be on social media to be an influencer, but so many people like the ego posting, right? It speaks volumes, right? If you are buying followers, right, you may need to audit yourself and your values, right? Look within and stop worrying about like, fuck. I couldn't tell you the last time I looked at a post and was like, how many people like that? Or, it's just like, I don't know. The buying followers one, I used to just see people, I'm like, they have to be buying followers. They get like the 118,000 followers and they get like 50 likes.
I know. It's embarrassing. It's honestly embarrassing. Like, that's one way to just suck out my respect for you is to.
Yeah. And also as a business, like when we work with people and we want to work with people who, they reflect our brand, and like when we're promoting our educational stuff, again, that I think is valuable and it sells itself, right? Yeah. It's like, I don't think we need to go out and sell there. It's like, you see people who are like, all these followers and they're just like posting ego shots and they get there's like no feedback. It's like, that can't even feel good.
Yeah. And something in the comment there, if you are of the mentality of like, I'm just going to buy my followers to get the 20K or something, and it'll be fine because one day I'll get like someone's going to give me a sponsorship or something like that. A couple of like endorsement discussions and stuff that I've had like in the last 12 months with like bigger companies, they ask to see screenshots and video recordings of your insights like on post. So they actually want to see what the engagement is.
Yeah.
Good companies know that like people buy followers, and they're not just looking at that number in terms of whether they're going to offer someone.
Yeah, they're auditing it.
Yeah, they are.
They're auditing their shit. I like that. All right. Well, we'll see you in 3 days, Jackson, in person. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Hopefully you found that insightful. I'm sure everyone who is listening is an Instagram social media user. If you're a business or an individual trying to build your brand, hopefully there's some important takeaways and some value provided from this long form content, not a 60-second reel, although there probably will be a couple of reels that come from it. Until next time, thank you all for tuning in, and Jackson, we'll see you in a couple of days.
Peace out.